now this is going to be a controversial topic right here. Does the Rings of Power, does it do Dwarves justice better than Jackson's movies? Ooh, I will admit, there's not a lot of things that I actually like about the Rings of Power, but I actually did really enjoy the Dwarves. I really did. I thought they were really fun to watch. I really enjoyed getting to see, their world and, the little ways about them. I did think they were more there than just comic relief. We got to really see the strength of them to a certain extent more. And, of course, you could say we got to see that in Lord of the Rings as well, of course. But I just personally enjoy getting to see their civilization, and that was cool. And, of course, we did get to see moments of that in The Hobbit, and we did get to see moments of that in Lord of the Rings. But by that time, it just kind of felt like the luster was gone, where now it's kind of, at civilization peak to a certain extent. Now, I'm not a Lord of the Rings expert, but I will say this. I personally thought the Dwarves were done well in the Rings of Power, at least the first 2 episodes. We'll have to see going forward. But let's go ahead and let's see if the Rings of Power does Dwarves justice better than Jackson's movies. Dwarves weren't shown at their best in Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit trilogies, but The Lord of the Rings of Power finally changes that. Amazon's The Lord of the Rings of Power takes place thousands of years before The Hobbit, so the show's portrayal of Middle-earth is different in several major ways compared to the Middle-earth seen in Peter Jackson's numerous film adaptations. One of the biggest differences is how dwarves are portrayed. And the difference is so stark it even stands out compared to other media portrayals of dwarves in fantasy settings. I can already see where this is going to go. Whether it's Peter Jackson's film adaptations or a video game like Skyrim, dwarves are consistently treated like the fantasy genre's version of Atlantis, a long-lost technologically advanced civilization, which that makes sense to do, does it not? The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogies went even further by making dwarves a frequent source of comic relief. Look, I don't have a problem with that to a certain extent. I feel like they were shown as formidable too. I don't feel like they were just there for comic relief. So I personally completely and totally disagree with that. And the idea that they have to bring in like Skyrim and other kind of forms of media just really doesn't give a good example of why, when you have to go outside the source material that you're trying to make an example of, you're probably not making a very good example. And I feel like this is one of those cases. I feel like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings made the dwarves look like a powerful people, a people that were, especially like in The Hobbit, that was trying to reclaim a lot of their glory that was lost when Smaug took over and destroyed a lot of their stuff. So, I feel like that's kind of wrong. So it became enough of a problem that the Lord of the Rings of Power showrunners promised to make dwarves cool again and address Gimli's complaint. I don't know. I kind of felt like they were cool. I always thought they were cool. The second episode of The Lord of the Rings of Power, doesn't completely strip dwarves of comedy. Elrond's visit to Khazad-dûm produces a much-needed injection of some lightheartedness, but it does show dwarves in their glorious heyday. The episode reveals the breathtaking scope of what a thriving dwarven civilization looks like from perspectives peoples may be familiar with, like feats of architecture and engineering. However, the episode also provides some fresh insights into dwarven culture. Okay. Again, not a Lord of the Rings expert here, but in The Hobbit, we got to see that. It might not have been in its heyday, but we did get to see their architectural, the scope of their magnificence as a civilization. We got to see that. And I feel like if you're going to say, well, Peter Jackson's version was just all about making dwarves into some kind of comedic relief, well, I kind of feel like the same was exactly done in the Rings of Power. Like, just because you think that the Rings of Power is more woke and, deals with more diversity, and you're trying to make it somehow better than Peter Jackson's version of, let's say, Dwarves, I kind of feel like this person's making a very good or a very bad reasoning here because, frankly, it's almost the exact same. However, the episode also provides some fresh insight in dwarven culture. Yeah. The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, takes place during the Second Age when dwarves were thriving, when Elrond and Celebrimbor journey to the legendary dwarven kingdom of Khazad-dûm. Celebrimbor notes, the dwarves sculpt the rocks with the respect of one who cares for an aged parent. Finally, someone can speak reverentially about dwarves in the present tense. Once Elrond gains entry after invoking the right of Sigyn Tarag, the half-human elf walks to the underground kingdom with his jaw agape as he marvels at the intricate agricultural system and mechanized transportation lifts. It's an incredible reflection of what Khazad-dûm was like before Balrog's inadvertent release. Look, it was pretty. I will give it that. It was pretty, and I did enjoy that scene. Elrond's goal is to meet with his dwarven friend Prince Durin IV to discuss the elves and dwarves joining forces to build a powerful forge. The same forge that will eventually be used to create the titular Rings of Power. Elrond invokes the right of Sigyn Tarag, a dwarven challenge between two competitors to see who can break the most rocks, to gain an audience with Durin IV. To the ensuing raucous scene is one of the first examples of dwarven culture being represented in any of the Lord of the Rings live-action adaptations that goes beyond superficial discussions of what are usually just dwarven tropes. Again, it was made for comic relief. It was literally made for comic relief. So nothing changed. Literally nothing changed. Later on, Elrond meets Durin IV's wife and two kids and has dinner with the dwarven family, which again was comic relief. The kids banging the heads together, that was comic relief. This also marks a franchise first for explicitly showing the familiar lifestyle of dwarves, dwarven, rather than it being just a topic of oft-wistful conversation before. Dwarves will play in it, and it just basically goes, I don't get it. I totally get it. The media is trying to portray this show as something that is really not. That is really not. It's trying to portray it as something better than Peter Jackson's versions of it. But the truth is Peter Jackson's versions was head over heels better. Like, it was so far, it's up in the clouds, and this show's in the mud. And they're trying to, replace that. They're trying to say that it's actually the other way around. No, dwarves were introduced in this as comic relief. They were straight up introduced in this for comic relief. Don't say they did that in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, that they did it there, but they're not doing it here. That's crap. That's utter crap. That's the media trying to portray this show as somehow better than Peter Jackson's version, and it just isn't. It just isn't. It's an average to below average series so far. Don't try to compare it to the brilliance of the Lord of the Rings movies. Don't even try to compare it to the Hobbit movies, because even those at this point, I believe, were better. I'm just saying. I just hate when the media tries to do this. Look, it's $1 billion bust. Let's just admit it. It's $1 billion bust. It's not as good as what people had hoped it would be. It's not, when you look at it compared to House of the Dragon, and there's all these comparisons about that, House of the Dragon is just far better. Just far better. In story, in looks, in everything. I mean, the CGI in The Rings of Power is beautiful in this aspect of it, when you see the Dwarven Kingdom. But in other aspects, it's horrible. It's horrible. It looks really bad. It looks like something that you saw from the prequel of Star Wars series or Star Wars movies. That's the way it looks. So I'm not buying it. I'm totally not buying it. And I'm kind of disrespected that they even are trying to pull this game. I knew they were going to, but it's ridiculous to say, well, they are so being progressive towards dwarves when it comes to this. No, they're not. They're using them for comic relief in the same as what Peter Jackson's version was, except Peter Jackson's versions actually showed, the greatness of their culture and of their fighting skills and of just them overall. He basically got what Tolkien was trying to exhibit when he was talking about the Dwarven kingdoms. Where this one is it's just a generic version of it. Anyways, guys, let me know what y'all think. Are y'all insulted by this as well? I kind of am. Do you believe that somehow the Rings of Power have showed a more progressive approach towards dwarves? Or do you believe that it's just a bunch of nonsense that the media is trying to make up to try to save this show, to try to save this billion-dollar bust? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Y'all take care.